All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Nick Anderson, Regional Sports Director, Special Olympics Maryland, taking over bowling this year as the sports lead. And this is the preseason coaches webinar for the 2016 10-pin bowling season. Our agenda for tonight. First off, registration and deadlines. Slight formatting issues there, at least on my screen, but training registration would be it was September 26th, so that's coming up in a couple weeks here. That's the date that all athletes, unified partners, coaches, anyone who's volunteering with your program would need to be entered in GMS, so make sure you work with your area to get those names to the correct person to make sure that they are in time. The next date we have is October 6th, and that is the last day to submit forms to SOMD HQ. So as everyone knows at this point, every athlete must have a completed medical form on file. That form has to be valid through the state championship. So we want the state championship, even though not everyone will advance, because if they do advance, we will not have time to turn around and get medical forms for those individuals who have advanced. So they have to be valid from this point on through the end of the season, through the end of the state championship. As well, every coach, unified partner, and volunteer would have to have a valid volunteer application. They must now also have protective behaviors, a valid protective behavior. So if you as a coach receives a training roster from me or your registration roster after the registration deadline, and you notice that there are a significant number of people not registered that you are not entirely sure why they are there, it is more than likely that they do not have protective behaviors. So individuals who have completed a volunteer form within the last 3 years but did not complete protective behaviors within the last 3 years will show up as being not registered.
Nick, just one note for folks. The expiration date for the protective behaviors will show on that report also. So that's just easy, something you could easily overlook without Nick pointing that out to you.
Thank you, Mike. Additionally, the concussion certification, that is new from last bowling season, correct, Mike?
That is correct. It started being mandatory January 1.
There you go. So yeah, new from last bowling season, but has been in place now for 9 months, give or take. So that has been in place for a little bit, but if you only coach bowling, this might be news to you. The concussion certification, every coach must have it. There's no way around that. There's no flexibility on that. That is a requirement now through our insurance. You must have a concussion certification. Additionally, all coaches must have a coach certification in a specific sport completed by October 6th. That is part of our continuing process to give our athletes the best possible competition and training opportunities. So on all of our coaches to be fully certified in the sport that they are coaching. All head coaches, I should say, not assistant coaches. We're not at that point yet, but all head coaches. Competition registration deadline for regionals is October 20th. So that's the point when everyone in your delegation who is participating, their athlete or unified partner, must be entered into their events with their proper scores. Any athlete or unified partner who's not entered into an event at that point will be removed from the regional tournament. Again, competition registration deadline for the state competition, that is November 21st. So that's athletes and partners who advance from regionals. We want the local programs to review the GMS records, and then go ahead and remove anyone who will not be able to attend the state competition. All right, moving on. Okay, so this form doesn't necessarily apply to bowling because we do have the regional competitions, but this form, I found out through some of the other sports I do that not every coach knows this form. and that it needs to be completed, so I figured I would include it here. This is our area county competition sanction form. So if you're hosting a locally popular bowling tournament that you just like to host every year, or you're hosting some sort of local bowling tournament where you may just invite another county to come down and get some additional bowling games in, that is a situation where we would need this filled out. And again, outside of the sport of bowling, an area is hosting a soccer qualifier, a golf qualifier, softball qualifier, basketball, whatever the sport may be, individual or team sport, this form needs to be filled out, signed by your area director, and it's submitted to the state office with 30 days before the competition. This is actually not our most updated copy of the form. I just realized I did not include the most updated version because this one still says to send it to Mike as opposed to your regional sports director. I will include a copy of the most up-to-date version of this form. Again, for bowling, unless you host like some small competition where you invite a couple counties, there's no reason for you to need to fill one of these out. If the regional tournament is in your area, you do not have to fill one of these out. I just wanted to share this form because I discovered some coaches have never seen it before and didn't know it existed. Coach certification. This is a long-standing SOMD policy that we haven't always adhered to. I believe this was also covered in last year's coaches webinar, but I'm going to cover it again. So all coaches for bowling, they must have a Special Olympics sports-specific certification that's through the state championship. And each delegation must have one head coach who's certified. Again, a sports coordinator can fill in that role as long as they have their certification. And then once you receive that certification, it's good for 3 years, just like any of our other forms. Again, with this being returning information from last year, I'm not going to cover all of this. Feel free when I send this information out to read through it if you would like some more. And then, again, reach out to myself or your regional sports director if you have additional questions on the coaching certifications. Again, I'm not going to cover this. If you have any questions on it when it gets sent out, feel free to ask me. Oops, 1, 2, 4. All right, bowling events. So nothing's changed. Still singles, traditional doubles, 2 athletes on the team, and unified doubles, 1 athlete, 1 unified partner on a team. But a side note here, it has been SOMD standard, or the SOMD standards have been that ramp bowlers, at least for the past couple of years, ramp bowlers will be divisioned with other competitors or teams in the same event. So, sorry, the wording there might be a little confusing. So ramp bowlers are divisioned with everyone else. That's been our standard for the last couple of years. We don't have specific ramp bowling divisions. Ramp bowlers must be designated either as unassisted, which means they do everything. They line their ramp up themselves. They put the ball on the ramp. They push the ramp down, or push the ball down the ramp. They do everything completely by themselves. Assisted is where they provide a verbal cue to their partner of where they would like their ramp placed. So they have to verbally communicate or physically communicate if they can't communicate verbally. There has to be some communication in whatever way that athlete communicates to their ramp assistant as to where they want their ramp lined up. So this doesn't mean if you have someone who's assisted that their assistant can just come up and put the ramp wherever they choose to put it and the athlete can just push the ball off. That is not okay. The assistant must have their back to the lane, look directly at the bowler, and the bowler communicates in whatever way they communicate where they want the ramp placed. Then the bowler pushes the ball down the ramp. A question, so an additional question to this, we're going to jump back to that first bullet point. Special Olympics Maryland apparently is the only Special Olympics program program in the Mid-Atlantic region that has ramp bowlers divisioned with non-ramp bowlers. So in other programs in the Mid-Atlantic, every other program in the Mid-Atlantic region, ramp bowlers bowl by themselves, non-ramp bowlers bowl by themselves. There's no carryover. Of the coaches who are on the call, how do you feel about that? Do you like the way we do it? Would you prefer to see us go back to how we did it in previous years with ramp bowlers bowling by themselves? Just some thoughts, and I'll open the floor right now for people to share thoughts. Again, if you've muted, it's just *6 to unmute your phone.
Debbie Fikencher, Montgomery County.
Hey, Debbie, how are you?
Well, I'm fine. We have bowlers who bowl with ramps who bowl every single practice with people who do not have ramps. I would see it as a major discrimination to isolate my ramp bowlers. I would not like to see that happen at all.
Perfect. Yeah, and I'm sorry, by me posing this question, I don't want anyone to say that we're going to do that. We just found it very interesting. There was recently a Mid-Atlantic program meeting in Delaware, and this was one of the feedback points that we got, that we were the only program that did it. So we just kind of wanted to get people's thoughts on it. Me personally, I'm leaning towards not taking the ramp bowlers out, leaving them in with the non-ramp bowlers, but we wanted to get feedback. Anyone else? All right, that's perfectly fine. You know, understand some people don't like chiming up and talking on these calls. So, in the follow-up email, I will include this question as one of the points. So please feel free to share, you know, any feelings you have, either for or against. Again, just because I said I'm leaning one direction doesn't mean anything. You know, if people make valid arguments as to why we should or shouldn't, then that's all that matters. We want to do what our coaches think is the best for the program. All right. Rules reminders. Okay, so there were new rules that came out in August 2016 for bowling. I went through the rules, the new rules, the best I could. There didn't seem to be very many rules changes. I didn't notice anything large. I'm sure there was something small here or there that I missed, just being new to the sport of bowling. But the key point was there were no major health and safety rule changes. So we will not be applying these rule changes for this season. We're going to go ahead and stick with 2014 rules. And the ultimate reason for that is typically when rules are released, SOI releases a rules change sheet that tells us exactly what has changed from the previous set of rules to the new set of rules. That sheet has not been released yet. So without literally reading through both rules page by page, line by line, word by word, we're not 100% sure what has changed. So we're going to hold off on moving to the new rules until we know exactly what has changed. Any questions on that? I'll go ahead and open that up before we move on in case there's any questions on that rule change and why we've decided to go that direction. No. All right, perfect. Handicap hasn't changed. Again, the handicap is normal based on 100% of the difference of the bowlers average in 200. So it's been what it's been for as long as I can remember. I'm not sure how many years ago that was instituted. I believe long before I was here. So nothing's changed there. Number of games. So we are bowling the 3 games at both the regional and state tournament. This is not typically done at practice. At least it hadn't been in previous years. So just coaches, remember, if you typically only bowl 2, then maybe towards the end of the season, once we get close to a regional tournament, a couple, 2, 3, 4 weeks before, just make sure you work with your bowlers on maybe bowling an additional game here and there. just to make sure they have enough stamina and endurance to go ahead and bowl those 3 games at the regional tournament and at the state tournament if they advance. Alternating lanes. We do that at the regional and state tournaments. So a game typically will be played on 2 lanes, a pair of lanes that are joining to each other, whether it's team competition, which we don't have, doubles competition, which we do, and singles competition, which we do. They'll change between lane by lane from frame to frame. So bowl on lane 1 on your first frame, you're going to bowl lane 2 on your second frame. So you alternate. Okay. Fouls, as has been the standard in recent years, foul line violations will be called at both the regional and state tournaments. So again, no changes there. Fouls can be called either by, the automatic foul system where you cross the line, you get called for a foul. A little buzzer goes off, or a light, or whatever the specific bowling alley has to indicate that foul, or it can be the tournament official who would call that foul. So they see someone step over the line, for some reason the buzzer doesn't go off, the lights go off, the tournament official can go ahead and call that. All right. Bowling ramps may be used by bowlers who do not have the physical ability to roll the ball with their hands or hands. The athlete must provide the force to make the ball go down the ramp. So that's what I was saying earlier, that whether they're assisted or unassisted, they actually have to physically push the ball down the ramp. Ramp bowlers, like I was saying earlier, or bowling ramps must be set by the athlete, both, either through a verbal gesture, verbal instruction, or a physical gesture. A ramp assistant typically should have his or her back to the pins while setting it up. Excuse me. Again, of course, there are situations where there's some sort of particularly challenging situation or communication challenge where a ramp assistant may have to turn around and face the pins, but the setting of the ramp still should be done in that situation, must be done, not should. In that situation, the setting of the ramp must be done through direction given by the bowler. So even if there's a unique situation where that assistant would be looking at the pins, it still has to be the bowler that ultimately says, this is where I want the ramp facing. Coaches are not permitted in the lane area during competition. So the lane area is the seating area by the scores table. Again, there of course are unique situations to that. If one of your athletes is having an issue while not bowling but while waiting for their turn, you may need to go down to the lane to assist them with whatever that issue is. Those are unique situations, but for the most part, just have yourself, your assistant coaches, your volunteers stay off of the lane area, and then let the tournament staff notify you if for some reason we need you to go into the lane area. Coaches can provide coaching advice from the spectator area. Bowlers may go to their coaches, but they cannot leave the lane area to receive that coaching. All right. Lane courtesy, I'm not going to read through this word for word. It's just simply, if someone's bowling on an adjoining lane, typical bowling courtesy is to wait until they're done as to not distract them. Try not to make your approach at the same time. Try not to use someone else's ball. Be ready when it's time to bowl. things of that nature. Just make sure at practice you're working with your bowlers on lane courtesy. Alternates. A bowler who is registered for singles may also be registered as an alternate for a doubles event. Alternates do not have to be assigned to a specific team. A bowler may only compete in one event though, so that they may not bowl singles and then be activated as an alternate for the doubles teams. Participants are eligible as alternates if registered as such in GMS prior to the competition, or the training registration deadline, competition registration deadline is spoken. To activate an alternate, it must be done by your head of delegation during the registration period at the beginning of whatever tournament it may be. If a bowler is activated as an alternate for a doubles team at the regional tournament, that bowler is the only person that may only advance to the state tournament as a member of the doubles team. So essentially, once you've activated an alternate to bowl at the regional tournament, they are committed. They are the second member of that team. If that team advances, there's no switching back to the original person. That team is set from that point on. Attire, appropriate attire should be for everyone in your entire program. You know, it starts at the top with you as coaches. You know, it's easier to convince your athletes to wear the appropriate attire if you're wearing the appropriate attire. But anyone on the lanes who's participating in the bowling competition must be in appropriate attire. That includes the ramp assistants. They must wear a collared shirt. The shirt does not have to be tucked in. During competition, they must wear bowling shoes, whether that is bowling shoes from the lane or bowling shoes that they own. Either one is fine, but bowling shoes must be worn. Headwear, no hats or rimless headwear is permitted, again, unless, of course, there are religious reasons, in which case just let us know, and we, of course, will accommodate religious needs or medical needs as well, of course. Attire continued, slacks and pants or shorts, similar to Dockers, khakis, are appropriate. So that is this picture up here in the top right corner. The list of inappropriate is there, you know, shorts that are too short, jeans, sweatpants, exercise pants, leggings, yoga pants, tight shorts, boxer shorts, anything where you can see exposed undergarments. Any of that is not okay. Those are inappropriate attire. And then a uniform inspection, as always, will be done just prior to competition. We will do our best, as we always do, to work with you, give you an opportunity to get your athletes who might be improperly outfitted in their proper uniform. But once games officially start rolling and once that athlete's turn comes up, they must be in appropriate attire. At that point, if they are not, they will be disqualified. So just make sure you as you guys always do, just make sure you continue to communicate throughout the entire season that appropriate attire needs to be worn. Qualifying for states, won 15-game average prior to the regional tournament. It can be a combination of games from other tournaments, league play, games completed during your practice session, anything else that may fall under there. Again, to advance to the state tournament, you must compete at the regional tournament. And then past that, you must be selected to advance from the regional tournament to the state tournament. All gold medalists, as in previous years, will advance. Some silver medalists will advance. That'll be done by a random draw of silver medalists from the regional tournament. The number draw will be based on the available slots that we have at the state tournament. And then obviously, number of slots that we have minus the gold medalists. In a situation where we have, which we more than likely will, more silver medalists than we have available slots, there'll be a wait list. And you will be informed, as the spot becomes available, you'll be informed if your athlete's next up on that wait list. And the drawing will be conducted no later than the Tuesday following the regional tournament.
Nick, one thing that I forgot to note, and that probably is the best place to insert this, as folks may be aware, the 2018 USA Games are coming up soon. We will be making selections. We don't know what our allotment is. I should say that first off. We should know it by the end of September. But assuming that we get bowling spots for that, we will be making our selection from the state competition this year. We're making all of our selections for whatever World Games or USA Games spots we get from competitions that occurred from July 1 of 2016 to June 30th of 2017, that program time period. So just as a heads up, if anybody's asking, it doesn't mean you shouldn't really do anything different. Your bowlers should be bowling as best they can throughout. But just want to be sure folks are aware that we will be selecting, assuming we get slots, we will be selecting our bowlers for the USA Games from this year's competition. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, Mike. Yeah, when I was doing the slides, I'm glad Mike was here to chime in. When I was making these slides earlier, I neglected to add that. Actually, as Mike mentioned, he missed that. He was just double-checking everything here. So back to what we're talking about, the regional tournaments. Again, these locations are tentative at this point. They are the same locations and assignments as last year, but they are tentative. It will be announced October 24th, whether or not there'll be any changes. The final announcement will be made then. Again, same as last year as of right now. And then again, where areas, just in case you're curious how we make the decision, the assignments for bowling alleys are, of course, both regional-based and then size-based. So if an area has a particularly large or an unusually large team or an unusually small team this year as compared to previous years, then the location may adjust one way or the other, just to make sure that all the lanes have a fairly even allocation. Deadlines again, what have we not covered? So okay, so there we go. We covered all this. November 10th, sorry there, it took me a second to realize, to think back to what we hadn't covered. The 10th, that will be the pre-competition webinar. It's again at 7. That is the link for it. Once I send the slide deck out, you can go ahead and go on there and register for it if you have not already. Then we have our regional tournaments. We have our registration deadline for states. And then we have a little earlier than we had it last year, prior to the Thanksgiving holiday, November 21st, we have the state pre-competition webinar. Again, we're holding that at 7. There's the link there. Just figured we would get it in before the holiday just because there's a pretty tight window once we come back and, with people traveling for the Thanksgiving holiday. We wanted to make sure that we had enough time to get that in and make sure that everyone would get all of the important information. All right, I'm going to go ahead and open it to the floor. Any questions from any coaches? All right, well, thank you, everyone. If you have any coaches, or excuse me, if you have any questions, within the next day or two, or at any point during the season, feel free to communicate with your regional sports director if it is very much a bowling-specific question, something specifically related to the bowling rules or specifically related to, the regional tournament or the state tournament, a very, very, very specific bowling question. Feel free to reach out to me. So your first point of contact for most general questions for all sports should be your regional sports directors. Their contact information, names, and the areas they cover are listed here. Again, you can access this information and those email addresses when this email comes out. And then again, I'm going to go ahead and scroll through real quick just so you can see. There is some additional information on paperwork and stuff here at the end that we didn't go over because it's a lot of stuff that we've covered in the past. But if you're interested, you can go ahead and feel free to read through all of this once it's sent out. But if there are no additional questions, then I'm good. And thank you very much, everyone, for spending some time with us this evening. And we're ready for the bowling season to get rolling. All right, thanks. Good night, everyone.